And for our last task, we're asked to configure stub zones here in our DNS server. And stub zones are honestly one of the more confusing parts of DNS services because when you create one, you're creating what is effectively a little miniature zone that contain only the core records that usually comprise a typical DNS zone. Stub zones are commonly used to store start of authority records or used to store other types of records that help a client identify the different machines that correspond with the name of the stub zone. Stub zones most commonly are used in place of conditional forwarders in the one specific circumstance where you want to identify all the possible authoritative servers for a zone as opposed to the single server that you configured in the conditional forwarder. Stub zones are also useful if you find that the person at the other end of the environment keeps changing around their DNS servers or their IP addressing. Down here under conditional forwarders, as you saw when we configured that, we configured specialized.net to the IP address 192.168.0.99. But by creating a stub zone, we can essentially have the zone gather information from that server dynamically as opposed to just typing it into a conditional forwarder manually. So let's go ahead and create a stub zone here to replace the existing conditional forwarder we created just a second ago. I'll choose to remove this specialized.net forwarder here, and then come back here under my forward lookup zones and create a new zone here that is a stub zone. We'll store this stub zone in Active Directory, just like we did earlier with those primary zones. If I choose next here, I can choose what the replication should be. I'll choose the default and make the zone specialized.net. Choose next here and identify what the master server should be for this zone, which again is 192.168.0.99. As I do that, you can see the checkbox down here on the bottom that uses this above server to create that local list of all the master servers that are out there, essentially fulfilling what we're attempting to do here with this stub zone. I'll choose the OK button here and next again and finish to go about creating that stub zone here for specialized.net. Now, one thing you should notice here is that in order for me to be able to gather the content from specialized.net, I have to have the appropriate zone transfer configuration set up to enable this computer to request the zone from that computer. In order to do that, I'll have to get on that remote machine, bighit.specialized.net, which I can attach to via Remote Desktop Protocol, so RDP. Let me log in here to our server BigHit and bring up the DNS tools, and just like we did before, let's come down here under forward lookup zones and make sure that we have our zone transfer configuration set appropriately. Here under zone transfers, it's currently set to only the servers on the name servers tab. One way in which I could resolve this would be to add in our server DC 192.168.0.100 into the list of servers that are allowed to actually request and receive a zone transfer, so 192.168.0.100. I'll choose OK here and OK, and that should actually configure the zone appropriately, which will allow me, to then refresh the screen here and see that indeed we now have the stub zone here for specialized.net. Notice what's different here as opposed to a conditional forwarder in that I have the start of authority record, the name server record, and the host record for BigHit. If things should change the next time the zone file gets reloaded or refreshed, well then that information should appear here in the stub zone so that our clients will know where they need to go in order to get that appropriate name resolution.